Hello, it's me, Kaylee. This is Kaylee Cross Stitch, my channel about cross stitching. And today is another stitch with me. And it's a special stitch with me, because I'm going to attempt to explain my stitching style. I use a diagonal parking method, and I would say probably the main people that this method is used by is Brian of Blitz Stitch and also Carla from Carla Being Crafty. So I did watch, before I tried this technique, I watched a few videos on it, and I really like this technique. I used to be a cross-country stitcher, and that means that you pick a color, stitch however many stitches of that color until your thread runs out, and then you can either keep stitching that color or you can get a new color and stitch that. I do like that method, especially the method that Stitchin' Mommy uses. She picks a color that is in the top of the pattern and just stitches until she runs out. Then she picks the next color to the left and stitches that strand. Then the next color, which I really want to try that method. It seems like a really fun method. Just stitch until your string runs out. But what originally I liked about the diagonal parking, and the just the parking method in general, is the decrease in decisions that I had to make about where to go next. Because I used to, when I stitched with paper, I would look at the section of that color that I was going to stitch, and I planned like exactly where I was going to go or what sort of route I would take. And in my opinion, I spent a lot of time planning rather than actually stitching. And this method, I don't have to plan. I just get to stitch whatever is in the next row or the next parallelogram. And parking makes it easy to not start and stop your threads a whole bunch, which I like. And probably my main plus that I have for diagonal parking is that you are almost always bringing your needle up from the back of the fabric in a hole that is empty or near empty, which I find very helpful in neatness of stitches, and then I don't have to spend a whole bunch of time like trying to poke my needle up in the perfect place in the hole. Because I do find that before I would stitch with, first of all, I stitched with needles that were too sharp, and then I would be splitting my threads as I was coming up through the hole. So the more I can cut down on bringing my needle up in holes that already have threads in them, the neater automatically my stitches are, which I love a good shortcut. So maybe you can try it and see if that helps you. So I'm going to try to show you on two pieces today. This is my fop piece. This is a picture of my husband and I at a wedding, and it was a costume wedding, so we dressed up. I was the princess, and my husband said, "Ooh, I want to be a fop to match you." And the wedding photographer took pictures of everyone, and it was this gorgeous house. So that column in the background, and it was kind of like an old pool table that we stood next to. Oh, excuse me. I'm drinking Coke. I'm sorry. It's a little Coke though, so it's less guilty, and it's the perfect amount. I usually find that if I drink a whole can of Coke, like a 12 ounce can, yeah, then it's too much. So I'm going to show you a screenshot of my Pattern Keeper, which, if you haven't used Pattern Keeper, it's a great app. It in addition to marking off your stitches really easily, you can search by symbol or by color. And you can also, as you can see from this, in row 1, there's a little blue mark, and that's showing me exactly where I have my thread parked, right here. Oh, let me move this a little bit. And hopefully this will make sense because there's not too many colors, first of all, in this pattern, but also in this block. There's this one. Is that the right way? Yeah. Nope. This one. It looks right to me. This one, there's the theta. Is that theta? There's equals, and then there's a triangle. So I have 3 of those parked. So there's only 4 in this parallelogram, and I'll try to explain. I wrote 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I don't think we'll get all the way to row 10, but probably with some of the parking it'll make sense. So what I do is I stitch by row. So I look in row 1. I've already stitched some of these because this is at the bottom of the other pages, and I was feathering my my edge because I didn't want a straight line, which I've kind of stopped doing that because I have started parking my floss at the bottom of the page, and then they just hang, and it's kind of like they would be going in the diagonal from the previous row. So I'm looking in row 1, and I have 1 stitch left to do in row 1, and it's the accent sign. Actually, that's not an accent, that's a baby crescendo. So then what I do is I just stitch that last one in row 1, and forgive me if this feels a little awkward up here. This is kind of close in the top of my Q-snap. Okay, so that one's done. So now in my pattern keeper, I mark off that last stitch in row 1 as complete. Or if I were using a paper pattern, I would just cross it off. So then I look in row 2, and they are all the accent mini crescendo. And I use I think it's unnecessary, but I had started using this method here. Let me see if I can, hang on, I'm so sorry. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. Oh, it's not as good. Yeah, it's okay. I'm using a like a modified tent stitch. Actually, I'm using Continental. That's what it is. Sorry. Trying to think and do something at the same time is not usually the best thing. Okay, autofocus. I'm going to turn autofocus on. And then maybe it'll focus a little better. So instead of going like up and down on the back of my fabric, I'm going diagonally. And I do that on fabric that is over 1, usually. Like I just kind of started this project that way and was like, well, I guess I'm stuck with it. But I don't think it's completely necessary on Aida to do this way, but it does sort of make your stitches a little neater, in my opinion. If you need a video on that, I can always do that. Okay, so I completed those 3 empty ones, and I have 1 more in row 2 to complete, so I just go carry my thread and do that one. Done. Okay, so now that I'm ready to start row 3, I look for that crescendo. This way. I look for that crescendo, and I see that they are going to appear in these second 2 slots. 1, 2. Oh, you can't even see that. I'm sorry. 1, 2. And since I see that there is another one right below it, right here too, I'm just going to stitch the first leg of all of the mini crescendos, music terms. What's this camera even? Hang on, I don't like how this is auto-focusing. I lied, I don't want it to focus. Tab to focus. And then this one that is parked there, that's the theta sign. So I just go past that, stitch the first leg, and I am stitching 7 of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 5, 6. So all of the first leg of those is stitched, and then I will go back and do the top leg. I forgot, I should show you how I mark my fabric for the rows and stuff. You know what, it's probably the real problem. It's not the straight on shot. So this is the problem that I have not really figured out yet, and this is my solution as of now, is that if you have to bring your needle up in a hole that has a parked thread, like I'm about to have to do right here. So this thread is parked in the hole that I need to put my thread in. So I usually just kind of tug it to one side and it opens up the hole a little bit, and I just slide my needle up, and usually it just kind of stays put. And then I move that out of the way and finish off these 2. Again, I'm in row 3 if you're looking at my diagram. And then I see that the next occurrence, sometimes if I'm doing full crosses like this, I always start, see, I can't even get this to stay. I always start on the left side. So I will park my mini crescendo in the next occurrence in row 4, the furthest to the left. So here is the equals, the equals is here. No, I'm in row, equals, no, equals. Oh my goodness, hang on. This is wrong. Oh, you know what? I think that one's supposed to be there. Okay. I just found a mistake in my stitching. Do, 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 do. Give me just a second. 1, 2. That's it. So in mine, this is a mistake. This is supposed to be the equals. No. Equals. Hold, please. I'm gonna pause while I figure this out. I'll be back. Okay, I figured it out. I was just missing this stitch, which is the stitch that is marked as done right below the number 3 from the previous diagonal. Don't you hate fixing the problems of your past self? Okay, so here I am in row 4, parking my crescendo, the symbol. I'm parking it in the furthest left of the row, and I park it in the lower right because that's where my first leg starts, because I go 1, 2, up through 3, down through 4. So then usually I take them off the needle, but I'm kind of a weirdo in this project and I'm stitching with really long threads. So I leave them on the needle and I just poke it in my grime guard and it just kind of stays there. So I'll just like poke it in and then it just stays there. So then I go to my pattern keeper, I mark off those stitches that I have completed, and then I park in where I put my thread, because I need to keep track of where I park things. Otherwise, it'll all go haywire. Now, something that I find is really easy about this project is that there's only 18 colors. So it's not as difficult to keep track of your colors. So if I don't mark on my pattern keeper where I park it, it's not going to be a huge deal, but it will be if you have a lot of color. Not a huge deal, but I mean, you'll figure it out. But if there's a lot more colors, which I'll show you in the next project, then I really need to make sure that I am showing myself where I parked it. And I always find ones that I'm like, oh, forgot to park that one. Okay, let me Google this. Is theta? Theta. Why am I getting... Nope, it's not theta. It's like theta except flipped on its side. Oh, there's another symbol in here that's theta. So let me just call this circle with an I in it. Circle with an I in it. Does that make sense? So the first circle with an I in it is in between my crescendos that I had to work around when I was stitching those. So I grab this one, the third stitch, and usually I just kind of decide which color I want to do next based on what's coming up in the next row. And sometimes I do running stitches, sometimes I stitch one at a time. It just kind of is like whatever. So then if you notice in row 4, the very last stitch in the parallelogram, or the last stitch in the row of number 4, is my circle with an I, and it has the red line through it, so that means that it's the last one in the parallelogram. Oh, maybe I should say the reason that I liked the the diagonal parking is that it then you don't have like straight lines up and down, because this is basically like stitching columns except offset. Okay, now here I am with a row 4 that is almost all the way complete, and so unless the color that I'm stitching with, which is the circle with an I, unless this is directly below an empty stitch, I just keep going with it. So as you can see, this one is, there's 2 of them right here, and then 2 of them right over here. So I'm just going to stitch those because they are below stitches that are already completed. And there's 2 of them. So you go 1, 2. I need to show you how I mark my fabric. And then here's my parked crescendo, so I'm gonna go right next to it and stitch those 2. Oh shoot. And you know, I do carry my thread a little bit more than I would have before when I was stitching cross country, because what I liked about that was that I was like really frugal with my thread. Get in the right hole. And then again, I'm just tugging this out of the way so I can get that stitch completed. Okay, now that all of these in row 4 are completed, I've been telling you row 3. Whoops, I'm sorry. So I just completed all the circle with an I in row 4. So now I look in row 5 and I see that the next one is underneath my already completed one. So since this is already completed, or the one above it is already completed, I'm just going to go ahead and do this one too. Because usually I would be taking this off the needle and threading my needle again every time I change colors. Oh, hey look, there's one right below it in row 6, way at the end, so I'm just going to save my thread and do that one too. And then the next one that is in row 6 is right below an already parked thread of the triangle. So I'm just gonna push that out of the way for a little bit and park right here. So I'm just gonna do the same thing, push my needle into my grime guard and be done. So let me show you, mark those off in Pattern Keeper, park. Okay, let me show you with pencil how I used to mark my fabric and why I don't really do it this much anymore. So the first thing, I like to mark the grid every 10, so that and these are basically just like guides for helping me park in the next row. So here, and I do it in an X because if I do it like straight up and down, then I was doing it with colored pencil before and that was showing through on the front, and I'm not quite sure if the colors that I was using would wash out that easily. I should just be not lazy and buy a water soluble pen or whatever. But who doesn't have a lead pencil? Why go find my pen when I can just use a pencil? So I count 10, 2, 4, 6, wait, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and I draw another X, so that the center of my X is the corner of the 10 by 10 grid. And then since I already have those done on the other one, then I can just, I usually do this like a row at a time, not the whole page, because these threads aren't being carried very far, but in my other one I have Easy Guide, so I don't even have to do this. Now, I used to, just for my sanity, I used to draw a diagonal where my diagonal was done. So it was easier for me to see where the end of my parallelogram was. And I suggest doing that if you're learning how to park, because it really visualizes with the pattern and on your fabric where exactly you're stitching. So I don't do it anymore because I know that I do these ones, and then I know that the weave that is horizontal is the end of the diagonal. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, there we go. So I know that the horizontal weaves are going to be the diagonal, if that makes sense. So if I have to park in the middle here somewhere, I just check the row, and or I go 1, 2, 3, park here if this is the last stitch. Oh, and then I just cover it up. I hope that makes sense. So let me just stitch a little bit more because I need to start one. Ooh, look at that close-up. Yes, phone. So I need to do the equals sign because that one did not have one parked, and that's the first one in row 3. And actually this is from the last diagonal. I didn't stitch that in the last diagonal, and the reason for that was because there was only one. So I was just like, okay, I'll just stitch it when I start the next diagonal. So I'm doing the stitch right now that is right below 2 and right to the right of 3. Now this pattern uses a lot of blended threads, and so excuse me, you can't use a loop start, which is sad. But so what I do is I use a pin stitch, a diagonal pin stitch. So here's the end of my thread, and what I do is I come up in the middle And you get used to doing this. So if this looks hard, then trust me, you get used to it. So I go up through the middle and I make sure to hold on to the end of the thread with my thumbnail and my first finger, and I just pull it until I feel my thumb and first finger snug to the hole. And then I let the slack go and go through the top left. And so now I have half of my bottom leg. And so I just complete that by coming up in the bottom right. It's getting darker here. And actually I pull tight and it doesn't move. And especially now, I'll go down in the middle. I have seen people do this where they just complete the end of the leg, but I find that especially on this fabric, then that kind of puts an unevenness in my stitch. Now it looks really gross, but guess what? We're just going to cover it up with this top leg. Boom. It almost looks like all the other stitches. Boy, when it's zoomed in this far, then wow, they don't look like really good. Okay, so here's another equals. And it's this first one in row 4, as you can see. And it's right next to where I parked that crescendo. Mini crescendo. So then I'm just going to do that one because why not? I have my needle threaded. And then that's all of the equals in row 4. So I am going to keep looking down in the pattern. And where is the next occurrence? It is all the way down in row 9. Now take a look. In row 9, equals is the very first symbol in that row. And since it's snug with the rest of them, I'm just going to do that stitch because if I don't have to rethread my needle right there, because the next stitch is in row 11 or row 1 of the next block, then I save myself a little bit of time. So let me, no, not that way, this way. So you can see my my little diagonal pencil mark here. That is the corner of the next block. So without counting all the way down, I can know that this is the end of my 10 by 10 block, because this is the first row of the next one. So this is row 10, this is row 9, this is where I need to put my stitch because that's where the equals one is. So I'm going to bring my needle up in that hole. Boy, is this even helpful? Is this even interesting? Usually I'm just quiet and stitching. Okay, so looking at my 10 by 10 parallelogram, that's all the equal signs in that parallelogram. So I'm going to park this, and depending on my mood, I might just leave it on the needle, or I'll take it off. I think I'm just going to take this one off because I'm not going to stitch more on this one today. So here's my next equals occurrence. This is technically row 11, 3 stitches in. So this would be the start of my first stitch, second stitch, third stitch. Always, and I think if you have done any research on parking, always park your threads in the same position. If you're parking threads, unless you're marking it on Pattern Keeper and you can make sense of that, you do you. But for me, I park in the same position all the time because then, it just is easier for my brain to understand. Okay, equals done, mark them off, park where you parked. Okay, then, boy, I wish I could put my tablet, like, so that I can screen share on my tablet on here, but I'll probably figure that out another day. So now I am in row 4, all of row 1, 2, 3. Oh, all of row 1, 2, 3 is completed. So I am in row 4, and all of the stitches left in row 4 are crescendo. Excuse me. Whoa. How many unsubscribes am I gonna get from burping? It's a normal bodily function. Okay. And here's the last one. Don't forget some of those straggler ones. Now sometimes I am a good planner and I see that this one, well, no, I don't want to do that. I'm always wary about which direction my threads are going, and trying to do things that make my X's a little bit neater. I don't railroad. I have tried it and it's just a lot of work. So I'm like, whatever, it's a whole coverage. Maybe if I were entering it in the county fair. Okay, completing all the top legs. Sometimes I notice that some of the stitches are, the top leg is kind of a little loose, so I just pull on that. If I know where that stitch was, then I just pull on it, but sometimes it doesn't fix it. Sometimes it does. Because you are sort of tugging the thread on the back if it's parked with your needle. I don't know if you're like me, and I stab my fabric a bunch of times until I actually put it in the right place. Okay, that's row 4 all complete. And then I can start on row 5. And since there's only 2 colors that I need to do in row 5 because I already completed the circle with an eye, then I'll just keep going with crescendo symbol. Comment below, do you think I should use this piece for monogame? Monogame is when you only stitch on one project the whole month. I'm not someone who likes a whole bunch of projects. I think I have 7 or 8, which I find myself being a little overwhelmed by. But they are big. Some of them are big. So I do want to start a few projects at the end of May, because I can buy patterns again. Why do I always just talk about my pattern buying ban, but I'm gonna make it. And so I want to just get a whole bunch of progress on this one. And I've had it for a year. This one has been started since last April or May, I think. So back to the idea that you're bringing your needle up in a hole that does not have as many threads in it. So that to me is really helpful. Where's this next one? So now I'm looking where to park this in row 6, and the very first stitch is a crescendo, so I'm going to park it there. Mark it off on Pattern Keeper. Sometimes if you can remember where you are, you don't have to do as much marking, and you can just select a whole bunch at the same time, which I do sometimes. So now I'm on the triangle, which has been parked since the beginning. So let me grab that, figure out which needle it's on. Oh. Shh, I'm recording. So now here's triangle. And I am going to park it in row A7, right below the circle with an eye through it. Okay, I think I'm gonna pause here, switch projects, and show you how I do this with 10 stitch, because my Supersized USA is in 10 stitch. So I can show you that, and that one has more colors, so I can sort of show you my my philosophy with that one. So pause, and I'll be right back. Hello. I wonder if that sound thing worked. We'll see if it did. Welcome back. It's been 1 second for you. I have my Supersized USA. And I have been stitching this on the diagonal, but a little bit, shh. It's probably not that loud for you. Anyway, I've been cheating a little bit. So here is what the final thing is going to look like, and it is going to be enormous. So let me make this a little bit. Let me just move this around a little bit because let me show you where I am, sort of where I stitched. Oh, this picture is cut off. It's cutting off the poor little moose guy. Sorry, I'm holding my phone in. So let me try to explain some stuff. This one I am pretty much stopping right at the bottom. I'm not feathering because I am parking the threads at the bottom. On my other project, I hadn't done that to begin with, and I'm going to start doing that because then, like, the color that I was using up here and parked right here, theoretically it's not going to make any lines because, theoretically, I haven't tested it yet, because it'll just be kind of like a continuation of the diagonal. So any lines that I get are the faint diagonal lines, which I need to watch more of Needlebug because I think she, like, has done enough stitching for that to be, you know, a really well-known concept to her. Does that make any sense? It's been a long day, I guess. So this looks like a disaster. I agree. But that's because there's 150 colors in this pattern as opposed to the 18 that are in the other one. So I leave colors on the needle much less. But if I'm stitching like a swath of one color, like all of this blue, there's only 2 colors, and I was easily able to leave both colors on a needle and just pop one on the needle minder while I stitch the other color. And I still use the sort of row by row method on this, unless it's super confetti heavy. So like these trees, there's lots of different colors. Washington, there's lots of different colors. I know it doesn't look like it, but there are. And I use cross country in those because there's just so many colors. Now, if I were stitching this full cross, I probably wouldn't do that. But since I'm stitching this 10 stitch, 2/1, then there are only 2 times where you put your thread through a single hole. It's from the bottom of one stitch to the top of the stitch diagonally to it. Let me see if I can describe that a little bit here. Let me set you down. So yeah, let me zoom you in. So since these are only half stitches, let me grab a needle to point. These needles work well for pointing. Pointy needles. So so for example, this stitch, this is the one diagonally to it, but I have no problem stitching this one, even though the one above it is not done, because the only other time that this thread is going in this hole is from one that was already stitched. So I can stitch this one and be able to bring my needle up through this hole very easily. Now my staying within the diagonal is a little looser on this one because I have started to see diagonal lines where my diagonals are, and that's because of, I think it's because of just the sheer amount of colors in those diagonals. And so I, especially with this big swath, I'm just like, I want to see more progress, not just a diagonal. I mean, I sort of started doing that. You know what? I don't even know anymore. But right here, this is a diagonal. These diagonals in this one are 20 wide because of the smaller fabric and 10 stitch. I was like, okay, I can handle 20. And this pattern is enormous, so it's just like, well, as much as I can be getting done at once is good. So I use the same idea. I stitch that color in that diagonal, and then if it doesn't appear in that diagonal anymore, I just park it in the next diagonal. And this project, I have been parking really far away and carrying my thread a lot. I'm gonna, if there's like only one, I might try not to do that as much. Just cut off a tiny bit of thread and do it. But because I've noticed this is really a bulky, thick project because of all the colors. So is that sort of answering? I don't know if that answers any questions. If you do have any questions, let me know in the comments and I can answer. But I can stitch a little bit on this one so you can see. And like I said in my floss tube, this is a great project because I can sort of pick what I want to stitch. So if I want like a big swath of color, I just continue in this Washington little bubble right here. If I want to stitch green, I can move up and do another row of green. If I want to do yellow, I can do yellow. If I want to do confetti, I can just find one of these pots and be able to do it confetti. So I do find that this project has a lot of variety as I reveal my messy home. So let me stitch a little bit. Last night I was working on Washington. Let me show you my, excuse me. Uh-oh. Sorry. I'm disgusting. Oh, look, it made my eyes water because there's so much carbonation. Let me show you my pattern keeper to this one, and you can sort of see where I'm fudging the lines a little bit. So here's Washington, and because this diagonal has a lot of the same color as is in this diagonal, and there's not a lot of color changes, I have started just stitching like both diagonals at the same time. Oh, let me be in frame. Because it's just less color changing, and then on the back it's not as, those lines won't be as noticeable. Plus I just want to stitch on the whole state, and I've been missing my cross country. So then for these, like especially up here where there's a distinct line of the border with Idaho, I'm not staying within the diagonal. The diagonal is right here, but I'm just like, dude, this is kind of like a diagonal, and I'm not stitching like a whole bunch underneath all this green. So I still do sort of try to keep the stitching below, because then the threads that will carry on the back aren't as extreme. Oh no, excuse me. So then, like, this diagonal is already started, so I will probably just like when this symbol kind of lines up, which it doesn't really with these other ones, this one, it doesn't really line up, so I'll probably just keep this diagonal by itself. But like, Yeah, see, that one doesn't really either. So then when I get to here with all this color, I'll probably just like split these diagonals and start stitching this one by itself and then this one by itself. Because what is that? Those little mountains are there. That's where those start to occur. Does any of this make sense? Or are you just watching me not stitch in a stitch with me? That's possible too. How long have I been on? 45 minutes. Okay, we got to get some done on this project a little bit. A little bit. I want to do this stuff. So I'm going to use this one. I love the variety of being able to just stitch this huge part and not confetti. So then I'm like kind of ready for confetti when it comes. Yeah. So, okay, let's stitch some. In Washington. So these I have been leaving, I will leave this on the needle because there's not that many colors in this area. And there's not any parked threads to work around. Let me zoom in. So this is 25 count, easy guide. So here are the grid lines. Why does this eye not have any black in it? All the other ones have like black in them. Wait, should I do like no talking as usual? This is just going to be straight up stitching. All of this is the same color, so let me just get going. That's the table, it's not me farting. This is the problem with having lots of parked threads, is sometimes your threads catch. I think for me, it was overwhelming at first to see that many threads just hanging out of the fabric. But you do get used to it, and you get used to where your threads can tuck into the grime guard, or you can just use a hair clip or something to keep them out of the way. But please leave any questions below, and if you're a cross stitcher who does diagonal parking and I left something out, please tell me. Maybe I should work on this for monogamy though. We'll see how many percentage points I can get to. I just passed 3%. 3% on a project, and I've already stitched 23,000 stitches on it. I think this is the equivalent to a Heaven and Earth Designs supersized. I think theirs go like 999 by something. Dude, it looks fine up close, but it looks like it's crazy how up close it makes the blemishes look worse. Not that the blemishes look bad, but oh, I should mention that I could be using Continental Stitch this whole time, but I'm too lazy to bring my needle up, like up right here, because that already has that already has threads in it. So I wanna just be able to put my needle up in a hole that's empty, because I think it's faster. And then I just don't tug very tight when I pull. So then half of my back is like this, and then half of it is straight up and down. Uh-oh. Ugh. Excuse me. I'm getting hungry. Excuse you. So now, the next occurrence of this is over here, but I haven't completed, let me point with but I haven't completed this stitch yet, which would be the other stitch that uses this hole. So I'm just gonna park this for a minute and stitch the color that is over here. I need to zoom out a little bit because it's over here. Oh, I need a new color is what I need. So I'm going to mark those off. Done. And park it. I love these different colors. Like, definitely have some color envy of me. 3607. Look at this color, y'all. Oh, pink. I need to buy more of this, apparently. So this is how I do my loop start. is I have my strand that is long enough to be doubled over, if that makes any sense. I bat it a little bit. Let me show you here. I bat it a little bit and then I grab one strand, hold this tight, and pull, and it just bunches up until the end. And sometimes I do have to like pull it so that it doesn't like knot up on itself. Then I have this again, and I would put it back on the bottom, but I'm just going to set it aside to not waste your time. Look at how nice I'm being today. God. Been talking for a whole 55 minutes. And then I line the two ends up. Lick it good. So you might think that rethreading your needle a whole bunch is annoying, and it is, but it's just part of the process. So eventually you've licked the end so many times that it's hard, and it threads really, really quickly. And for me, and I think Brian at Blitz Stitch talked about this in his video too, which I'll link below. I'll link Carla and Brian below. I think what they said was, or especially what Brian said, was that like the amount of time that you are threading your needle is still less than the amount of time that you plan where you're going to go when you're doing cross country, which I took a long time to plan. Like I said, I would like plan a whole swath, and it was slow going. So you even have to move it. So then for my pin stitch, or for my loop start, excuse me. Oh, whoops. I go in from the front, leave the loop, almost did it again. Up through the second hole, and I just put my needle through the loop right away so that when I pull, it's caught. And usually when you go back down the same hole, you can pull the loop to the back and it's secure. Boy, I have to keep working on this today. I like this. Maybe I'll do an Instagram poll. Which project should I use for monogame? I mean, if I can handle not buying a pattern for 6 months, I can probably handle working on, well, she says, I can probably handle working on the same project for a whole month. Maybe. I don't know, it just seems kind of cool to be like, finally fulfill the prophecy of what would happen if I worked on one project for a whole month. Only one. Never been to Washington, but I'm going soon. Yeah, I'm going soon. I do want to, before I end, shout out one more floss tuber. And that is Needle Ninja. She does 10 stitch full coverage projects. And she actually shows you Pattern Keeper when she's stitching, which, I mean, I don't think she could get in trouble for that because she's not showing the whole pattern and she's not showing every single stitching session she does on that project. So, I mean, I don't know how somebody could duplicate that project. Am I getting her in trouble? Never mind. I didn't say anything. But she does explain pretty well about where she parks and whatnot. So she also uses a parking method where she doesn't have to bring bring her needle up in a hole that is full of floss. Okay, I think I'm gonna finish this row because we have just hit an hour and my mind is a little tired. I need to recover from my day, relax, stitch some more maybe, and yeah, I guess by next time you'll know if I'm doing monogamy because it will be May, and maybe by then you will have voted for which project. I don't know. See, I shouldn't be making plans in public because then you actually have to stick to them. You know what, this would probably be a good project to do that with because there's lots of different places to stitch on this one. So, I don't know, we'll see. We'll see what I decide. Okay, I'm gonna stop there. Have a... There, isn't it cute? It's huge. It's gonna be like a lot of years before I finish this project. But that's okay because it's so colorful, because there's lots of different colors on it. Let me not like completely make it go away. There. Here, let me move it up so you can admire it more. Oh, USA, USA. I don't actually believe that. I'm just like zoned out looking at my home project. Okay, tired Kaylee / overstimulated brain Kaylee is going to say goodbye to you. I hope you found this helpful if you're interested in diagonal parking or any kind of parking for that matter. And if I didn't explain something well enough, please leave a comment and I will try to clarify. And if need be, I'll record another video and show you what I meant. Maybe in my floss tube I'll answer any questions that I had from this video. And then maybe I'll be more organized and give you a diagram or something. I can show you that. So happy stitching. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out. And I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.